Good evening, everybody, and good on you for coming out tonight. That's real central New York punk rock if I've ever seen it. Welcome to the Other Side's long-running series, The Big Conversation, discussing important but seldom covered issues from an anarchist or anti-capitalist perspective. My name is Sherman Stein, and I'm heading the recently created committee responsible for organizing the series into the future. They say that a camel is a horse created by a committee, so if you notice any humps during tonight's talk, Orin's inevitable innuendos aside, that would be why. Before I proceed, I would like to remind everyone that The Other Side is a 501c3 nonprofit organization with no paid staff that exists primarily on patron donations, so if you are able, please hit the jug on your way out. But I digress. It is my honor to introduce these two individuals, and they most certainly are that, Kim and Orin Domenico. In the relatively short time that I have known them, there are a few others that have had such a profound impact on my life. My experience with the cafe began like so many others when I was in high school. It was a strange place in being from Floyd, a foreign city, where I could run off to after school with my friends and neglect both my homework and my curfew. For me, it was my first exposure to any sort of counterculture and stood in direct defiance to the rule notion that Utica was a deadly, gang-infested hellscape. Here was a place plastered in art with the best music you've never heard, where people were unafraid to be themselves, where engaging in dialogue with a stranger wasn't just commonplace, it was almost expected of you, where your opinions were welcomed and yet constructively challenged, causing both parties to review what they believed so as to substantiate their own argument, while also growing their appreciation and understanding for the position of the other side. Which brings me to how I finally met these two. I hesitate to call them gurus, but I can't come up with a word more aptly fitting than that. It was, I believe, October of 2020 when I saw a poster in the cafe advertising a poetry reading at some place called The Other Side, and on a whim, I called the number and showed up to the event alone. I was extremely intimidated. Everyone seemed to know one another, and forgive me for saying this, Will, I was the youngest person in the room by far. Then Orin got up and read a poem called, and I'll never forget it, I Yam What I Yam, an Easter sonata written for banjo, bassoon, and kazoo. And I thought, where the hell am I? And so this is what the liberals have been up to for the last 6 months of quarantine. At the intermission, I was approached by who I now know was Ruth Deandra and Kim Domenico, as I was the only stranger in the room. After introducing myself and explaining my abstention from using a cell phone, I was met for the first time in my life with enthusiastic approval. At the time, I thought, for so long I've been searching for an underground network of revolutionaries, and it turns out to be these old ladies. I now know this initial assumption to be 100% correct. About a year later, I became the last person the Domenicos would ever hire at their cafe, which was a matter of credibility, thanks to Isaiah, rather than experience, thanks to Molly. It was the best job I'll ever have, not because I was making coffee, but because of the agency I was granted to do so, which I believe is central to their philosophy, and because of the incredible community of individuals I was surrounded by. In closing, I would like to share this quote by Voltairine Leclerc. Anarchism teaches the possibility of society in which the needs of life may be fully supplied for all, in which the opportunities for complete development of mind and body shall be the heritage of all. As it teaches that all this is possible without the exhaustion of body and mind, which is hourly wrecking the brain and brawn of the nations in the present struggle of the workers to achieve a competence, it follows that our anarchism creates rebels. Out of the blindly submissive, it makes the discontented. Out of the unconsciously dissatisfied, it makes the consciously dissatisfied. So without further ado, it is my honor to introduce Kim and Orin Domenico.
Thank you, Sherman. Thank you. You were the perfect person to give the introduction tonight. Hearing words like that, you cannot imagine how that feels to somebody to me and Orin. I know you always hope that you have an influence and that what you've done means something to others. And thank you for coming out tonight. It's a terrible night. I'm sure it had an impact on the numbers, because I know this place would have been, I think there would have been people hanging off the rafters, come on, to hear this tonight. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Thank you for being here. I know we're being videotaped, so other people will get to see this too. And I, as Luddite as I am, I'm glad that that can happen. And people who can't be here tonight, after all, the weather is forbidding, can also. I know there were other people that wanted to be here because I've talked to them. The title tonight, The Ballad of the Glad Cafe. Originally, the full title was By Two Mad Hat Wearers, which, that's a sort of a play on Mad Hatters, and I have to make a nod to Carl Alberico because he's the punster. He was the cafe punster, and I'm nothing compared to him. But I've never read The Ballad of the Sad Cafe by Carson McCullers, which is what that title. Anybody here ever read that book? Yeah? It's strange, right? I read about it, but the Southern Gothic is weird, but wonderful too. I do intend to read it. I want to thank the idealistic young people who urged us to do this. Honestly, I wondered how we could conclude the era of the cafe. And we've been kind of hanging in suspension since last March 30th, not really knowing how to do that. And so I thank you, particularly Sherman and Andrew, kind of really, were like totally, yeah, of course you're going to do this. So that helped me, helped this to happen. So. And we did it in the context of the Big Conversation series, which we've, after the pandemic, we've had difficulty getting it started again, and Sherman has taken that up, and I'm really grateful for him for doing that. This series is dedicated to the remarkable woman, Sunithi Bajekal, who lived, I don't know how long she lived in Utica, but anybody who lived here before 2014, I think it was when she died, for the several decades before that, knew her. If you were in a certain...
There's a plaque up there.
And she tirelessly organized protests and actions on behalf of one important cause or another. And she worked with Uticans, both white and people of color, in a way that so far nobody has been able to replace. If there are actions sometimes, I don't know who's organizing them. Those protests against the killing of Robert Brooke, I didn't even know who organized it. I'm not on social media and stuff like that, so I didn't. So it's very different now. You used to get a personal invitation. You used to get a personal. Here's my son, Nick. I do not remember what year we began this series, The Big Conversation. I do know we had some memorable talks and exciting times, and I'm grateful to Sherman, Davide, Stella, Anna, and Ruth for plunging into this project of, it could be expressed as thinking globally, acting locally. I didn't make that up. And to Andrew, as always, for his stalwart tech support. This guy is unbelievable. I wrote him today with things. Oh, we didn't get somebody up there on the, and he corrected it and put them on the slides, on these quotation slides we have up on the wall here. As for the plan tonight, we're thinking about a half-hour talk. I'm hoping to keep it contained within a half an hour. Then we want to hear from you if you want to speak and add to the incredible abundance of words you've already seen up on the screen, some of which are probably yours. A lot of you, I think, wrote. We've decided the best way for us to do this is for Orin and me, for me to do the talk and Orin to interrupt. Because that's what we do, that's the way it works anyway. So... But I've asked him to kind of...
Go to the kids about the interrupting chicken.
Yeah.
I'm the interrupting rooster.
Yeah. And I've asked him to interrupt as little as... Actually, I've asked him to qualify that a little bit because I wanted to include... The more I read these great words that people wrote, the more I wanted to at least use them a little bit in what I was saying. And they added more to the length that I was going to say, that I was going to use. As for the, you want to?
No. He wanted me to test the microphone. So I know when I interrupt people. Will
Okay. Okay.
Hello.
Okay, we're all tested. We've just, so my aim is to say a couple of things about where we were coming from, a few things about where we were coming from in starting this local business. And it may help explain, or it may not, all these amazing comments, the love, the intense feeling that you can read in so many of these comments from people. So I'll begin. My explanation is this. The cafe was a particular local expression of the big dream. By that, I mean a dream like John Lennon spoke of in Imagine, in his song Imagine. John wasn't saying, imagine that big house in the country or the fine retirement you will have someday. The big dream was a world of peace and plenty for everyone, a utopian dream. Very big and unrealistic. But all big dreams have a social conscience. I said that. John Lennon did not say that. Oh, by the way, if you are interested, Utica University has their wonderful film series Thursday night. Tomorrow night, they're showing a film made up of a week of shows of the Mike Douglas show. Some of you are old enough to remember that, and some of you aren't. That John and Yoko Ono not only were guests on, but curated the shows. So all the people on these shows are people that they selected. This is at Utica University tomorrow night at 7 o'clock in their usual film series. So I hope a lot of people are watching out there who can support this. I think it's pretty cool. I can't take a poll, but I know that there was a lot of enthusiasm or excitement around the announcement of this talk. And it makes me feel that people may be in need of a pep talk after the election. And I don't assume everybody here feels that way. Some people are feeling that at last things are going to get straight again and the world is going to return what it's supposed to be, et cetera, et cetera. And Orin and I both have always had some sympathy with the conservative perspective, not the nationalist, mega reactionary end, but the cafe was in many ways a throwback. We wanted to preserve some things that we thought were valuable. So you remember no Wi-Fi at the Cafe Domenico? We took a lot of flack for that. No card machine? Are you crazy? In this day and age? But it was just like no butter at Joe's, at Pelletier Joe's. Everybody should have been used to that, you know. We took a conservative stand because we had an idea behind it of local, face-to-face, embodied community. I wish there was a better word for what I want to talk about or what I thought we stood for, but that's one that sort of says it.
One inspiration in that regard was James Hillman, the Jungian psychologist who wrote about the city needed places where people could meet face to face with one another. The city depended on that entirely. And that was the guiding principle in our establishment, and to follow the Green Onion as well, you know. So anyhow, interrupt her.
Yeah, good. James Hillman, we love him. So it was the idea was of local face-to-face embodied community as kind of what we, embedded here in Utica, could do. That's what we could do to build the dream. And taking just that one thing, face-to-face social relationships, looking at how everyone has accommodated ourselves to a less embodied world. Me too. I spend hours of connecting on my computer. Our human hunger for contact now supplied largely via screens, while we accommodate ourselves to a less warm, less friendly, less stable, and less safe environment. Grandma and grandpa across the country instead of around the block. Sorry, I just threw that in. But that's what we've done. You know, if we have our family close by, we're rare. You know, when we have that. The big dream is not progressive in the sense of bigger and better. It's not anti-progress exactly, or at least it isn't as far as I feel. But if you do what we did, friendly warning, you will be accused of being anti-progress. A friend and former business owner once seriously advised us that in business, the only color is green, not blue or red. I got it. I understood what he was saying. But all we were trying to do, that he was reacting to, was seriously attempt not to compromise our values. Totally, you know, which are not contained by the blue and red distinction. Our values are not. And I'm not suggesting our way is good for anybody else or that anyone else should try this at home, but I'm telling you honestly and truthfully what made the cafe what it was. So face-to-face community was one idea. Another idea we had was independence. Very important if you were going to be a wacko utopian. You have to be independent. And I learned this from William Blake, the English mystic poet and social radical, who was an independent, skilled tradesman. He made art, drawings, and with his own London shop. And this allowed him, having his own place, allowed him to have his bold, prophetic voice. For us, owning a business was the means to have our independent voice here in Utica, and to provide as much as possible a space in which the voices of others could be respected. We held that line pretty well. It began to break down somewhat in the early years of Trumpism, or of Trump's administration, when some customers stopped coming. In fact, quite a few. If we had not been followers of our particular local articulation of the dream, we never would have resisted putting in Wi-Fi for so long, never would have kept taking cash only, never would have resisted using social media or any kind of advertising. We didn't always completely agree on that because we have some nice, like Mohawk Valley Living and so on, some nice local magazines, but we never did it. To attract people, never would have resisted opening a second Domenico's, as we were urged to do, somewhere else. Without the dream, we might not have even gotten off the ground. Welcome, people. Without the dream, we wouldn't have gotten off the ground. I'm just going to say, if we weren't up in the clouds with our ideas, we wouldn't have gotten off the ground because, one example, an accountant friend at the time, when we were having this idea, in no uncertain terms, condemned the idea. And nobody we knew, not one person, encouraged our starting of this coffee shop business.
The accountant said we never lasted. We did. He died shortly thereafter.
That is true, but I don't think there's a connection. In fact, we had no savings. We were. This is all the reasons we shouldn't have done what we did, and I mean it. In fact, we had no savings. We were responsible for a household with children whose future we were supposed to make secure by getting them into the best college. And Orin was lugging around. I hope you know this. I don't want to shock people, but a felony record, which from the '60s, which made getting a small business loan from the government not possible. Even though he had written the best business plan that the loan officer at the Savings Bank of Utica, that was at the time, had ever seen. Her hands were tied. So that is taking our cues from the big dream that we were involved in. We did not do what we were supposed to do. This is like the central point for me. We relied entirely on each other for the reassurance that we weren't crazy, or if we were, we at least were together, you know. Doubly mad, exactly. So this is the key to what made the cafe the real place that our people loved. Somehow the team of two extremely talented, I'll just say, he's talented anyway, and differently maladjusted people united under the umbrella of that dream, that we could make such a thing happen. Orin was much better at holding steadfast to the kinds of decisions we got pushback on, the Wi-Fi, the franchising, and so on. He held to staying small and not branching into food. I would always say, food would be so nice, you know. But I know he was right. We couldn't have done it. We had to stay small. I'm temperamentally more of a yielder, but I respected where he was coming from. We needed that kind of decisiveness if we were to be more than just feel-good feelings. His obstinacy, you'd think he was a Taurus. We had this big thing about astrological signs last night at the book club. And Taurus, they're, obstinate. But he's not a Taurus. But his obstinacy was essential to being who we were. So the question is, how does one become so faithful to the dream that you arrive at being able to do what you are not supposed to do? And I just want to go through some influences that were our influences. And these are also my gratitude list of the things and the people that made us able to do that. So I'm trying to be brief. Number one, it's sort of in chronological order. Number one was we happened to be two children of artists. Both of our fathers were artists. So, of course, we inherited our aesthetic sensibility from them. You just do. Art was all around us when we were growing up. But I have to add, we can never underestimate the influence it has on one to see your father spending hours a day in front of an easel or a sketch pad in his studio or out in nature, drawing and painting. That's what your father is doing. At some level, as I see it now, I didn't see it then, something in a person is wondering, just what is Dad communing with? I'm not saying I thought it then, but I'm thinking about it later, that this must have entered you, me. What is Dad communing with? For he's surely not just being idle. He's doing something intently and seriously. But what is it? what is it that directs the lines he draws or the colors he adds here or there? It's mysterious. This is an influence that can be extremely, as a child of that influence, it can be very difficult to figure out what to do with that influence. It's not like what anybody else's dad does. So let's say that one is left with, if one's parent is an artist, and it might be the same, I know Gina's back there, her mother was an artist. So it might be the same if one's parent is an artist, that what is left with is an orientation to the intangible. I'll just use that word because that's what we're talking about, intangible. So that was influence number one. Influence number two, the 60s. Not so much at the time for me, definitely yes for him. He was very influenced by the 60s from that time on. And not so much the crazy part, I think, for either of us, but later I realized how much I'd retained from that era when people talked and acted seriously upon the dream of peace, love, and concern for the earth. Things that aren't really talked about these days much. Orin, do you want to say anything? He had much more experience. I don't know if you have to say anything. How are you going to summarize?
I don't know really what you're getting at, except I did a lot of acid,
right.
I also got involved a lot in things like going down to. I was in the first anti-Vietnam march. Before it, I sat with Allen Ginsberg, and he taught me the Hare Krishna chant. And we went on this march, and I remember somebody throwing a flower pot out the window and trying to land it on my head, and that kind of stuff. And I was like about 16 years old or 18 years old or something. So those were,
yeah.
I did a lot of weird shit.
It's the 60s. Okay, influence number two. Influence number three. Chronologically speaking again, my training in ministry, I don't know how many people know here, I'm a graduate of Yale Divinity School, class of 79. And I didn't actually want to be a minister. I mean, I know that now. But I took it on because I was clueless and because it seemed to lead in that direction of the intangibles. I mean, that's what I know now, that I went in that direction because I thought it was because it felt like it was going towards that. And I didn't know what it was. But those years, though, they didn't answer the question for me of what propelled my father's hand holding the paintbrush. They definitely had an impact on me in terms of caring about community and specifically about inclusive community. The social gospel. You go to a Christian seminary, which this was, and that you're gonna be influenced by that. I remember visiting a back to the land old friend from hippie days on her farm in Maine, and she and her partner advocated this, living on the farm and back on the land, as an answer to the establishment, a way to live authentically. But we, fresh from New Haven, Connecticut, with its lively and enveloping inner city, said, how can this be the answer when everybody can't do it? I mean, it just seemed so apparent to us, that it couldn't be. And so it's clear to me the move into Utica. We were not in Utica for a while, and I was not born and raised in Utica myself. We were. So the move into the Utica and the cafe was a way to address this community inclusivity. It was very, very important to me. Unlike professional ministry, I felt suited to the role of co-business owner. I could dream. I found I was very good at dreaming and believing in what I dreamed. I had something I could do. I was good at that. So. And my writing is indispensable for that, by the way. Influence number 4, chronologically, is my family. Glad they got here in time for this moment. There have been many struggles, like in any family, but our children are so good. They rallied behind the Cafe Dream, and they built it with us. The
first day that we opened, Molly and I sat there. We stood there in the morning, like 6 o'clock in the morning. And it was like an hour, and nobody came in. Then we got our first customer, and then it started going. And then at the end of the day, we did our first Z report, and we just broke $100. And we hopped up and down, just yay!
Yeah.
And contrary to what everybody said, we earned money from day one, from the first year on. The place was earning money, partly because we were hardly paying ourselves at first, but it quickly picked up.
It helped you. So, build it and they will come, I guess. When my brother's son Isaiah moved here from Puerto Rico and worked at our cafe, if you were customers, you knew Isaiah too. That was the frosting on the cake for me. We didn't know Isaiah really. He grew up apart from us, and he came here. And it was just a dream come true. I see my children reflected in the eyes of the community, as if indeed they are children of the entire village, not just of their biological parents. For all that they stayed local, our children and their partners in life are independent spirits, and I'm always learning from them. Influence number 5, the 80s, which was popularly referred to in the media as the me decade. It was a put down. Another way to think of it was a time when many white, middle-class, educated people were apparently feeling that same hunger I had for the intangibles. God hunger, I could call it, which is interesting when most people I knew didn't believe in God. But and that's why. In the 80s, people wanted to know something that they didn't have any idea how they could connect with. So there was a huge popular movement to have experience of the divine. Some people traveled to India, some joined ashrams, some people became Buddhists, some joined 12-step groups, which were free and available everywhere, and they were honestly genuine ways to have access to the intangibles. Influence number 6, and I'm getting to the real mystical mumbo-jumbo part. Can we have my quotations, please? Okay. So these are some of the quotations that have been on my bulletin board since, in the room where I do my writing, since 1990 something or so, And I'm saying that they have truly become a part of my, the way I think and what I believe. I should go through them, right? If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. That's from the gospel. That's from the Gnostic gospel, according to Thomas. Joseph Campbell said, we think of her. He got so deeply into mythology that he really, it made him think very deeply. If we think of ourselves almost indigenously, I guess I should say, if we think of ourselves as coming out of the earth rather than having been thrown here from somewhere else, you see that we are the earth. We are the consciousness of the earth. These are the eyes of the earth, and this is the voice of the earth. And then William Blake was probably, these are just a few of these great proverbs he wrote. What are they called? I forget, but anyway, sorry. If the fool would persist in his folly, he would become wise. Now that's the biggie. If the fool would persist in his folly, because we were sure we were fools. So here it was, William Blake's telling us, persist. That's the only way you can go. Exuberance is beauty. Sooner murder an infant in the cradle than nurse unacted desires. Those are... So those were very, very important to me. I mean, when you're struggling with, oh, we're doing this crazy, crazy thing, nobody's acknowledging that it's the right thing to do. We needed some strong voices, you know. And then this, I love this, Jean Cocteau. Is he a filmmaker? Yeah. Whatever other people reprove in you, cultivate. It is you. And then, I'm not going to pretend I'm a big student of the Bhagavad Gita. I got this quote from somewhere else, but it so spoke to me. It is better to follow your own life's mission or dharma, however imperfectly, than to assume the life mission of another person, however successfysfully.
I have to add one more to this list, and that is Popeye the Sailor. I am what I am.
Okay.
Says it all.
As I said, Orin's the interrupter, so. So those were. So finally, back in the mid-90s, I have to summarize something. I had an intense initiatory experience, taking the long way through long psychotherapy and so on and so forth. Not the LSD way, which, you know, I'm not judging that, but it's a similar realization that people come to, you know, through intense experience. I finally found the source of whatever it was that guided my father's brush on the canvas. I knew it, like Walt Whitman knew, and William Blake knew, and Joseph Campbell knew, and Carl Jung knew, or I suppose in a way like Carlos Castaneda knew, minus the peyote, which I never experienced. But these are not experiences that you can really talk about. People look at you strangely when you talk about them, so you don't do it. You just. I did read an interesting one of the magazines. News magazines that Orin brings home had a little piece on Denzel Washington, the actor, and he was talking about how he's a religious man apparently, and he said, he was expressing the reluctance to speak about mystical experiences, which everyone has who has one. He said, I think I said it out loud. I wanted to see the face of God. And he said he's driving along, and I don't think there was any drugs involved or anything. And he said he looked out the window, and there this face in the sky. He saw it, and he said, "I saw it, and I will say I saw it, and I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm going to say that I saw it." You know, so that's kind of the position that you put you in when you've had a real experience. And I am forever grateful for that because it changed my life completely. Back in the 80s and 90s, I talked with people who'd been on spiritual retreats. They called them trainings, weekend-long intense affairs that ended with a group experience of, one at a time, walking across a bed of hot coals. Has anybody here done that? I talked to a number of people who'd had that experience. I never had this experience, but I also could not doubt that it happened, that consciousness had been so altered that people could walk on coals and not be burned. And that for me kind of summed up, you know, over a period of a decade, my consciousness had been altered, about a decade. I could now believe in a dream. I couldn't have before that. It gave me the certainty I needed to do things that were the wrong thing to do. I'm sorry, some people can probably do them. I know there's some great people out there, you know, our anarchist calendar that we used to have up in the cafe. Those people, those great people. But I know I needed to have this experience. So, so everybody may not have to go through something like this to follow your dream. Maybe if you start younger. A little hope there if you start younger. I was in my 40s when I had this experience. But if we were going to make the cafe, I needed Orin's belief in what I knew, and he needed it too. We both needed to believe that this was like God, you know, this is what we were supposed to be doing. So, as Thoreau said, if you have built castles in the air, and we had, our dream was the cafe, then your work need not be lost. That is where they should be. Now, put the foundations under them. So the dream, the foundation. Orin was the foundations builder as far as I'm concerned. I'm good at the dreaming part. He was competent, and he was incredible confidence in what he knew, always bordering on arrogance. And his taste was much more educated than my own in areas like jazz and blues. He learned about how to deal with the health department and the tax collectors. We couldn't hire an accountant. We did have an accountant, but we had to do a lot of it ourselves. He did it. And the tax collectors and all that stuff you have to know in running a business, even no matter how small.
I did it really old school too. I didn't do any of that. I don't even remember. What's the name of the program?
QuickBooks.
I just had it. It was all pencil, paper, and number crunching with it. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, thanks, Molly. It worked well until it didn't. And we needed his famous abrasiveness because he could deal with the world as something that was not designed to meet one's expectations. One had to be sharp, skeptical, combative. I had none of that ability. I don't know if it was working class background or Italian American background. I don't know what it was, but he could do it and I couldn't. Together, I from my end and he from his, we upheld the dream reality. Towards the end, we were starting to wear out and it was time to stop. But how do you stop something that has the intangibles woven into it? That's been the sort of hanging over me since March 30th of last year. The cafe had such great sensual input. Paintings everywhere, images from art and literature all over the walls and the long shelf, that long shelf, like icons in a church. The smell of freshly ground coffee, the jazz music, unfamiliar to many people. The jazz was unfamiliar to many people who walked in, but it became familiar. They knew it after a while. The old furniture, the Italian table, the little balcony in the back sitting room, the colors, the baristas, especially Orin and Molly and Nick, but also Ken, Allison, Becca, Alexis, Isaiah, Sherman, Patty, and probably at least a half a dozen others. At least 6 more, right? That I'm not.
Oh, you're like missing
20 people, okay. So you actually know, okay.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
No.
Those are the good ones.
You forgot Prosper.
No, I didn't forget him. No, I didn't forget him. That's kind of why I didn't name all the other. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But, so the cafe was all that, and it was what all its customers made of it, how you saw, experienced, felt about it. In the final analysis, as the sense of loss fades, it hasn't faded a lot for me yet, but it has faded a little bit. Memory will turn the cafe to local legend. And my one wish is that there be a local left here to keep the legend alive. That will be up to you, especially you, the young people who have heard and responded. So that's it. That's what I wanted to say tonight. Thank you very much. If people want to say anything, it's okay if you don't, but if you do, apparently there's a microphone that's going to pick you up, so we don't have to run around with a microphone. Well, we're being video. This is being videotaped. It's going to be on YouTube, so just to say. So, anybody want to? Reiner.
Why didn't you mention the other side?
I think I spoke long enough, don't you? I mean, I feel like there's only so many things you can say. I actually forgot. I was going to read some of the great quotations. I was going to speak some of them. I mean, I may still do that because some of these things, these people, these were poets. You know what people felt about the cafe because what came out of them was not what you ordinarily hear from people. I mean, it was a lot of cases it was poetry.
By the way, do you know how it got the name The Other Side? So there was it was a dry cleaner pickup in here, and when they moved out, we grabbed it. We told the landlord, yeah, we want to rent that space too, and people kept asking us, what are you going to do on the other side? What are you going to do on the other side? I said, okay, let's call it The Other Side, and that's how it came to be The Other Side.
Let me just read a couple, because I was going to do this earlier, if you don't mind. This. I'm not going to use the last names, but I will say the first names, and a lot of you are going to know exactly who they are. This is from Colin. I'm just taking excerpts. I'm not trying to read the whole thing. Through your shop, you not only served a nice product and provided community and acceptance to everyone, you maintained an elevated culture and free thought in what otherwise can seem a desert of ignorance. Not mincing words here. For essentially a generation, which is, 25 years is a generation. We came close. You promoted these values at what became a vibrant oasis of ideas, decompression, and community. And Utica is a better place because of it. It certainly is an uphill battle against these anti-culture, anti-human forces consistently converging on America, but you fought a valiant fight with this small business in a very David and Goliath sense. When one small business can have this kind of impact for a generation, you can be sure that you've not only done something deeply meaningful, but you've inspired others. I like that. These are just little excerpts. This has been the corner store of my life. The cafe brought life to full color. I'm going to pick the ones that are like more poetic. Well, this one kills me. Cafe Domenico is life. Cafe Domenico is dead. It will be composted. It will and will live again in the art, in the love, in the acts of those of us who got to experience it. And then this is from Jim. This is, and I know he's quoting, I love this because he's quoting from a book by Eugene Nasser, who was a literary scholar who lived in Utica and had made the decision to live in Utica, even though he could have gone to other places. And he was a Lebanese American, and he celebrated the Lebanese East Utica community. And he, one of his stories was about a coffee shop that was apparently very big in the Lebanese Utica community. And there was a poet that he quoted, and Jim quoted the poet about this Arab cafe. You gave purpose and meaning to this little corner in Utica. I think that wasn't part of the poem. Praise be to the Lord for the coffee house, refuge of the saintly and sons of the mountain. Praised be the heart that still feels, man for man, son for mother, child for grandfather. Oof. Here's one. I've just returned from a day trip to New Orleans. Besides the music, New Orleans. Besides the music, I attempted to visit a variety of coffee shops there. None of them came close to the feeling of this cafe. There was not the crosstalk from one table to another that you see here on a busy day. Even people who are not friends with each other say hello and have an exchange here. Cafe D's has been a home for something that is at once dreamlike and very, very real. I have spent a lot of time thinking about what this place means to me over the last couple of years in particular. No words have ever come close to expressing even a fraction of my gratitude. The closest I might get is by sharing that it has been my favorite place in the entire world. No exaggeration. For well over a decade. I only hope that the Domenicos know that the safety and love that has erupted from the cafe has given so much to so many, and it will continue to do so. Thank you for giving of your souls and hearts to this community. Creativity, where intelligence meets adventure. Love it, love it, love it. That was an anonymous. When I was first told, this was written on April 22nd, 2024, a little afterwards. When I was first told, I thought it was an April Fool's joke, an eclipse of the sun. I like that. Dave wrote, we were looking at this one earlier. I remember when the Domenicos opened this gem just after Cafe La Rave closed. I have the greatest memories of this place, including, I'm sorry for those of you who were here earlier, you already heard this, or read it. Good company, the smell of robust coffee brewing, the sound of the milk frother, the taste of rich, warm chocolate chip cookies, the faint, muffled creak of the wood floor as you made your way to the counter, the sound of jazz music playing so subtly in the background, the exquisite art on the walls, and the familiar faces that greeted you with kindness even in their most stressful hour. To me, the cafe was like a slice of heaven that God commissioned the Domenicos to run. I can still see the morning sun, the dark skies of rain, and the piles of snow from their front windows looking out. The coffee warmed your palate, but the cafe warmed your soul. Their blood, sweat, and tears could be felt every time you entered those doors because nothing was more consistent, genuine, and full of pride than this oasis. I mean, I didn't write this. My only regret is not having been able to visit one last time before it closed. May God bless this great family in their journey ahead. Cafe Domenico was the first place I really felt at home after moving to the area. And I use that one because other people have told me that. Yeah.
Hi. I was going to interrupt what you were doing.
Okay. You want to interrupt?
Yeah. I was just going to say that you mentioned that Pop, like at the beginning, that part of what enabled the cafe to start was his, like you said, combative. You said a few things. I can't remember the words you used, but you were like his nature being like combative, his ability to like stand up to whatever was like against us starting it. But I also see as being a part of our success, the opposite of that, like his acceptance and welcoming of all the like part of like, and it was hard for me to get used to it too, and I worked there from the beginning, was just like how welcoming he was to all the like outliers of society and the weirdos and the people that some people might actually just like not want in their business, but like, and I had a hard time with that. Like, there were times when I like wouldn't serve someone who didn't have money.
Very few people
tried to like, or came in and were like really annoying. I'd be like, I'm sorry, like I can't deal with you, like whatever. And then my dad would be like, what? Why did you turn that person away? Like, you know. And that was a big part of, and it didn't make us financially successful, but like. As far as our popularity and the loyalty of people, I think that accepting those people that weren't good customers in a financial way, but like that loved us and that we like accepted, was a really big part of the business as far as like community. Yeah.
I agree completely. Thank you for adding that. See, interruptions are good. Interruptions are good. And anything I say or read it jogs something in you, please interrupt. Here's another writer. In my mind, the toy shop secretly transformed, or the toy shop that was there before our cafe. In my mind, the toy shop secretly transformed overnight into an equally magical place, especially to Utica teens just wanting to hang and be cool. Some of my
reminded me of something else too, and that is that one element of the cafe that was there from day one. I mean, even when we were preparing to open it, was Grizzles the bear. Grizzles the bear was a toy in that toy shop that I bought for myself when I was doing something with having a bear, you know. But what he became was my evil alter ego, so that everybody that Grizzles ran into, he was like insulting, you know. My brother-in-law thought, he would say, "What are you in those Florence Flames, you flamers?" And you know, he would be totally politically incorrect and racist.
Yeah,
but it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
But that was, nobody else knew that, Grizzles. But yeah. This writer went on. Some of my fondest high school memories are sitting with friends watching the LeMayo brothers. We did have live music there at one time. This is the same writer. What is it that Cafe Domenico seemed to emit and give to so many of us over these years? A bit of Utica soul. Cafe Domenico spoke to people's souls, and with its language, it had a soul itself. I am so happy that I was able to pass this bit of soul on to my two kids, who have had the joy of playing in the secret spot under the stairs. She didn't call it Grizzle's place, but... and thank you so much to the Domenico family for giving Utica such a welcoming, soulful spot for nearly 22 years. Cafe Domenico kept a huge facet of Utica's creativity, artistry, jazz, and soul alive. It helped shape the modern landscape of this unique city that so many of us love. I'm going to tell you who this is. This is Julia. This is the mayor's sister, Mike Galimi's sister, Julia, who was a writer and a teacher of English up in Utah, right? Yeah. Yeah, and a wonderful person. I cannot imagine Utica without Cafe Domenico, and I am forever grateful and thankful for its existence. As a teenager, Domenico's was the gathering point for my friends and the perfect spot to do homework, play chess, listen to the musical talents of Rainbow Young, which is why I read that one, or just pick up a cup or go embark on an adventure of walking around the city. That was Mason. So many, on a different note, so many people have passed away in the last several years. Now losing the place itself just seems like the passing of an old friend. Well, I understand why, and I wish Orin, Kim, and Molly, and Nick all the best. It saddens me still. For someone who often, this is another separate new writer, Andrea, somebody called Andrea. For someone who felt like an outsider growing up in the cafe's eclectic nature, crafted a space where everyone fit, a rare gem in a landscape of conformity. At Domenico's, the labels of outsider seemed to dissolve and were replaced by the warm embrace of a community where diversity and uniqueness was not just accepted, but celebrated. Some of the best conversation of my life, often with strangers, happened within the colorful walls, and I will cherish them for as long as I live. Thank you for creating such a beautiful space, filling it with so much life. You've created more than just a cafe. You've nurtured a home for the wandering spirits, for those in search of conversation, connection, and a cup of coffee that was quite simply unparalleled. I put that in there for... Okay, and I'm going to just close with one sentence. A woman from the neighborhood wrote, "The Domenico family has made an immeasurable difference in the lives of all age groups in our South Utica neighborhood, but especially for 3 women in our 80s. So those are, I mean, that's just, that's just a few of the things that were up on that screen. But so, anyway. Orin's going to close with a poem, but if anybody has anything else to say. I mean, yeah.
I've met some of the most phenomenal people in my life through you and your endeavors, so thank you.
Thanks for saying that. Yeah.
You know, one thing Sunitha, you didn't mention is what a pain in the ass you could be. We had a poetry reading here, I remember one of the early ones with the Rag and Bone Shop Poetry Theater, and we were doing the poetry of Yeats, and I remember her saying, "How come you didn't read any poetry by women?" Getting on our case. There were no women reading, and oh dear.
So she could be tough. She could be tough. That's the whole point, isn't it? There's two parts to everything.
So, shall I read this?
You got a mic right there.
Just use my microphone. There. So, anyhow, this is called "We All Need Somebody to Love," sang the Reverend Solomon Burke, a 4x14. Is it time to sing the Ballad of the Glad Cafe? Or it is time to sing the Ballad of the Glad Cafe. It is time to sing the Ballad of the Glad Cafe, made sad only in its demise. So now we sing this bittersweet lullaby to lay our sweet, darling cafe to its final rest. But it is not a dirge that I wish to play today. Hip, hip, hooray for the Glad Cafe that we created, gliding us on gossamer wings of a seditious dream. It was Lech Kowalski who called the Cafe Domenico revolutionary in a way. and it got in the way of normalcy, and it grew to be a towering oak tree at the corner of Emerson Street and Genesee. And folks moved into the neighborhood just to be in the proximate vicinity and in the vicinity of its spawn, the GOP and the Comedy Improv Uptown Theater. We do not have to rob Paul to give to Peter. We rode the teeter-totter up and down between celestial splendor and the grounded firmament, holding it all together with duct tape, spit, and non-toxic cement glue for plastic models. We kept the sidewalks shoveled and well-salted and played glorious music on the killer Bose sound system. Get the fuck out of here Get the fuck out of here was my joyful greeting to the hoi polloi. And from day one, in his den beneath the staircase lay Grizzles the bear, my insult-slinging alter ego. Just listen to that bear rap, amigo. Part 2. That's a horse of a different complexion. Artwork by both of our two fathers and framed LP covers covered the walls. In front was a commissioned mural depicting the history of the noble coffee bean, beginning with a frisky goat in Yemen and ending with the Cafe Domenico. Glory be, we created icon-hung Catholic grotto walls with our heroes from Robert Johnson to Dean Dino Martin. Outside, we erected an awning bearing the logo Cafe Domenico with its steaming coffee cup, which was created by the late, great artist Karen Christensen, and since distributed all around the world wide on literally thousands of Cafe D coffee mugs. That is no exaggeration. We'd get something like 500 every time we ordered them, and we've did it at least, I mean, there's thousands and thousands of those things all over the world. It's really great to think of. Maybe it'll be worth something someday. Say, literally thousands of Cafe D coffee mugs. So listen to all you lugs and lugettes. We are motherfucking sure that we're not done yet. We are aiding and abetting a cultural revolution, a notion we declared with our ML King banner that called for a complete moral revolution rather than a mere tweaking of existing social structures. This all in proximate paraphrase. You who've chosen to be here tonight must have heard our clarion call, calling all God's children back from the goddamn shopping mall to the epicenter of cultural insurrection. That's a horse of a different complexion and a wellspring source of different inflection. I want to thank everyone who chose to be here tonight in recognition that we all need somebody to love. Thank you.
Keep the local, keep the local, keep the legend alive.
Yeah, no joke in that.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I